Are you worried about the possibility of OSHA showing up at your front door for a surprise inspection and you're not exactly sure how to prepare for that possibility? If that sounds like you've come to the right place, because I've created this new series of videos called How to Pass Your OSHA Inspection. And in this edition of the series, I'm going to talk about the nitty-gritty. I'm going to talk about how much a inspection could end up costing your company. The hard truth is, if you're not prepared, this could end up costing your company literally tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in this video, I'm going to talk about how those fines can stack up so quickly, and how quickly and how much that could end up costing your company, so that you can be prepared and prevent that from ever happening. All right, so before getting into that, if you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe to our channel, and make sure to hit that notifications bell so that you're notified every time that I upload new content, which will be 2 to 3 times per month, where I'm going to cover the most common environmental health and safety regulations and issues that impact small manufacturing and industrial companies. All right, so my name is Russell Carr, and as I've mentioned in previous editions of this series, I've helped many small manufacturers navigate the entire OSHA enforcement process, from the initial inspection to fixing violations, and even helping companies to fight back and defend against citations and fines, and even getting them thrown out sometimes. And in this series, I'm going to share with you some of the most important things I learned throughout that process. So again, you can be prepared and pass your OSHA inspection if that inspector ever ends up showing up at your front door. All right, so let's get started. All right, so let's get started here. Let's go ahead and talk about how much a failed inspection could end up costing your company if you're not prepared. And I'm going to start off by giving you a real life example of an actual OSHA fine that happened here in Texas. So Durcon, a Texas manufacturer, was fined $459,918 after an employee complaint, which, as we talked about in a previous video, is the #1 trigger for OSHA inspections, which resulted in 25 different violations. So it was a combination of serious, repeat, and willful violations, including failure to manage a hearing conservation program, multiple lockout tagout violations, failure to implement a confined space program, failure to provide forklift training, various electrical violations, multiple respiratory protection program violations, and multiple machine guarding violations. And there were more, but these are some of the most common ones. And so what you can see here is that the point here is that OSHA inspectors are very good at picking out all these very common OSHA standards that companies fail to manage. And they're very good at piling up these citations and these fines and penalties that can quickly add up to over $100,000. So this isn't at all uncommon. So I wanted to share with you this real life example so you really can understand how bad it can get. And it doesn't matter what the size of your company is. It can be a big manufacturing company, a small manufacturing company. OSHA doesn't care. So anyway, let's go on and talk about more about what it could end up costing your company if you're not ready and you get inspected. So in reality, the average failed inspection at a small manufacturer will cost the company somewhere between $35,000 and $90,000. And that's because on average, a failed inspection will result in anywhere between 5 and 10 serious violations. And we talked about that in a previous video. The maximum for a serious is $14,502. But we also talked about how the inspector has the ability to adjust fines downward based on the company's record, the company's attitude during the inspection, how cooperative they are. So a lot of times they're not going to max them out at $14,000 each if it's a serious. The average for a serious violation, after everything is taken into consideration for a small company, is going to be between $7,000 and $8,000. So that's how 5 to 10 serious violations can add up to an average of $35,000 to $90,000 per. But sometimes they can max out at $14,502, and that could be a lot more expensive. It's also important to understand that you can be fined for failing to manage all what I call aspects of OSHA standards. And this kind of goes back to that example I gave you before: multiple violations for lockout, tagout, multiple respiratory protection. Let me explain what that means. So they can fine you for physical hazards that exist out in your workplace, that fall under lockout, tagout, hazard communication, for example, unlabeled chemical containers, that kind of thing. They can also fine you for not having written programs. So every OSHA standard has a written program requirement that goes with it. And it can't just be some generic thing that you bought off the internet or downloaded off the internet. It has to be updated and customized to your company's specific health and safety hazards. So if you don't have those written programs, they can hit you for that. Employee training, every OSHA standard has a training requirement for your employees, both to cover the generic standard, what it says, and then also to address your company's specific health and safety hazards. Then, not having procedures, lockout, tagout is a very common one. You've got to develop equipment-specific lockout, tagout procedures for every one of your pieces of equipment with multiple energy sources, not just one, lockout, tagout procedure that doesn't cover the standard. It's got to cover everything. And then assessments like hazard assessments under the PPE standard, you have to have those created and signed and certified and filed. Also health exposure testing. So if you have high noise areas, you have to assess for that. Or if you have chemical exposures to hazardous chemicals or hazardous substances, you have to assess to make sure you're not exceeding the PEL or the permissible exposure limit. If you don't have those exposure tests, then you can get cited for that. So the point is, and also annual updates and reviews. So most of these programs have a requirement to do annual updates and reviews. So if you add new equipment, you add new chemicals, you got to update your program. So in other words, it's important to understand that, for example, if you don't have a hazard communication program, that's not one citation. No, that could be up to 5, 6, or even 7 different serious citations if you don't have that standard covered. And that applies to every one of the standards. So it's important to understand that. Also, as we talked about in a previous video, total fines are also dependent on what triggered the inspection and the scope of the inspection. So as a quick review, if it's an employee complaint, that inspection might just focus on one hazard or just a few hazards. On the other hand, if it is an expanded inspection or a comprehensive inspection, again, they're gonna scrutinize and inspect all aspects of your health and safety program, just like all the aspects that we just talked about. A comprehensive inspection can result in many violations and really huge fines, like we showed in that initial example there. And also, as we talked about in a previous video, just a quick recap, if company management is found to be negligent about safety, then those willful or repeat violations can result in fines, total fines that exceed $100,000, $200,000 or more. So remember that a willful and a repeat, they both carry maximums of $145,000 plus each. So again, if the company management is willful, in other words, if they created a safety hazard intentionally, or if they knew about a health or safety hazard and failed to take action to fix it, the inspector can find out about that by doing confidential interviews with your employees. And then they can issue these repeats and willfuls that will add up to over $100,000 very quickly, multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars like you saw in that other example. All right, so that pretty much covers what we want to talk about today as far as what a failed inspection could end up costing your company. Again, to recap, on average between $35,000 and $90,000. But if it's a comprehensive inspection or an expanded inspection, it could easily exceed $100,000, $200,000 or more. If you haven't watched the other videos in this series where we talk in more detail about all these different issues, make sure to check it out. Also, if you have any questions or any experiences that you want to share, feel free to post below and I'll respond to everything. And that pretty much covers it for this topic, but stick around for a minute here where I'm going to make you a special offer to help deal with these risks, how to get prepared for an inspection, how to pass an inspection, how to beat the inspector, how to avoid all these liabilities and risks that we've been talking about. All right, so let me begin to wrap up by asking you a very simple but also a very important question, and that's this. Are you and your company really ready if OSHA shows up tomorrow in your lobby for a surprise inspection? The fact is, if you're like most small manufacturing and industrial companies, the answer is probably no. And if that sounds like you, don't feel bad. Again, you're not alone. But the fact is, if that's the case, you are currently at major risk. The fact is that OSHA goes across the country every single day and hits small companies just like yours and issues all kinds of citations, fines and penalties that often run into the tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you got to ask yourself, could you really afford that? So having said that, I also want to make the point that the best preparation and the best way to pass an inspection is to know and have the confidence that you have a fully functioning OSHA compliance health and safety program. I know that's easier said than done, but at this point in time, I want to make a very special, free, no obligation offer to you to help you get on track if you don't have a safety program right now. I want to offer you free enrollment in our small manufacturer safety school. So let me tell you about this program. What it does is it gives you the training, the knowledge, and the resources so you can actually start to build a customized safety program and get prepared for that inspector. So let me explain what comes with that program. It's a three-parter. Number one, we have the mini OSHA crash course designed specifically to meet the needs of small manufacturing and industrial companies. So in this free training, I'm going to walk you step by step through the process of determining which OSHA compliance requirements apply to your company and how to build that program and how to manage that program for the long term. Another really important thing to understand about this crash course, it's built for non-experts. So most of the people, most of the companies that come to us, they don't know anything about safety. So I built that program with that in mind. So even if you know nothing from safety, you'll really benefit from it. The other thing that you're going to get is an OSHA compliance check sheet. So after you watch the course, you can use this as a self-assessment, gap assessment tool to see which one of these OSHA laws applies to your company, figure out if you have it in place or not. If you don't, this document will also function as sort of a roadmap forward to get your company on the road towards compliance. The final thing that we're offering in the Small Manufacturer Safety School, I'm going to invite you to live, free, monthly training sessions where I'm going to do deep dives and cover everything that's covered in the crash course so that you can learn step-by-step instructions for actually how to build a customized safety program for your company. Again, it's free, it's no obligation, you have absolutely nothing to lose. I'm going to put a link in below the video here where you can enroll and get started immediately on your road towards compliance. I look forward to seeing you in some of those live sessions. Also, make sure to stick around for the next edition of how to pass your OSHA inspection. And finally, if you haven't already and you like what you learned today, please go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Make sure to hit that notifications bell so that you're notified every time that I upload new content, which will be 2 to 3 times per month, diving deep into the environmental health and safety regulations and issues that impact small manufacturing and industrial companies. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.